All right, I just arrived at a new job site, and this is what we're doing. Little patio here. It's going to be 8 feet off of that blocks. That's the block retaining because you got a crawl space under this modular. So we're going 8 feet off of that block out here. We're going to go 32 feet long. Little patio area. I'll show you, we're doing another job right next door, which is ideal because I can fit both of these jobs off of one concrete truck. Also the pump, I'm going to use a pump to pump this out so I can easily drag the hose from one location to the other. There's that location, and here's where we are now. We're going to get rid of this railroad tie here. We're going to pour up against the existing. Then we're going to adjust these ties to fit the space of the new concrete. So the whole border will have these railroad ties on it. What I'll do is I'm going to screw some lag bolts into the side of these railroad ties so they're not going to move once it's poured. It's like poured in place. 12 by 22 right here. Any excess dirt we can generate out of here, probably going to go to that side. We'll see what happens when we get some forms in, move some railroad ties around, and let's get to work. Hi, this is David Odell with Odell Complete Concrete. This is the first day on the job site. We have two houses next door to each other, so it was a really good gig for me. I was able to knock out both of these houses with one load of concrete. First thing we're going to do here is just lay a form. This is 8 feet out from the house. This is a manufactured home. It's got a crawl space underneath, and that's the block that's retaining the dirt. You see that at the bottom of the house. And it's not very straight. It's not very level. But what we did is we picked the low point and got 2% slope. So some of the areas where the block's a little higher might be a little over 2%. There's a 16 duplex on the end. So at this point, we didn't have to do much dirt work. We just set the forms. Now that we can really see the elevation, we're pretty good. We're a little deep. You can see the space underneath the form. We're about 6 inches deep, you know, kind of an average. At the far end, we're probably 4.5. At this end towards us, we're about 6.5. But here's my new compactor, battery powered. The nice thing about the battery on this tool is it fits all my other Milwaukee tools. So if I have 3 batteries, I'm only using one tool, say, a day, then it's plenty to just, you know, keep rotating the batteries and run that tool all day long. I'm going to use a wire mesh reinforcement on this. It's a 10 gauge, 6-inch squares on the wire. These sheets from Home Depot are 5 foot wide. They're 150 feet in a roll. Now, because I'm pouring against that block foundation, but I'm not bound in by another fixed object on the opposing side, I'm not going to have to put foam along that block wall. Now here's the neighbor's property. We've got that other job ready. Now we walked right across to the neighbor's house, and he's got some railroad ties in here. We're going to reuse the railroad ties as the formwork. Now I'm just going to square off to establish my string line off of his existing concrete. That's not a guarantee off the existing concrete. So also I pulled the line down the side of the house as well as an offset. And then we double checked. That concrete that was initially put in was pretty close. A lot of times it's not. but in this case it was. So, and we verified it by the side of the house with the string. So he's got some different railroad ties in here, some different size railroad ties, but we found that one side of the railroad ties, the dimensions, were the same as the other ties. So some of the ties we turned upright, some of them we laid flat. That way we'd have, from the top view, you'd see the same width all the way down. So railroad ties in concrete, it's a nice look, actually. If you're going, especially if you're doing like an exposed aggregate, so nice river rock, 3/4 or so, and you're doing exposed aggregate, and you're going with that like rustic river or kind of just a rustic look, you can run railroad ties through the middle where your control joints would be, do an exposed aggregate, and that's a nice look. And these ties, railroad ties, last, a long time. They're treated in creosol, which is basically the bugs aren't going to eat them. It prevents them from rotting. It does a lot of good stuff to them. But it does become hazardous waste at that point. So trying to take these to your local landfill, they're not going to accept them. You have to do hazardous waste on these things. So it's good if you can keep them, and utilize them for something. In this case, that's exactly what we did. You see the bush in the background over that wood fence? That's what, according to the homeowner, he was telling me that the creosol comes from that particular bush, which grows wild here in the desert, Mojave Desert. So if those bushes, for instance, you see that bush behind the wood fence on the left? That's where they get the creosol, according to this homeowner here. And if those bushes catch on fire, they're very hard to put out. Even these ties are hard to put out if they catch on fire because of the oils in them. So is that bush hazardous waste? That's, I don't know, because you got the ties that have the creosote, which comes from a bush. That's hazardous waste. Is the bush hazardous waste? That's something that's kind of debatable, I guess. What's really going on there? So the depth of this concrete right here, the ties are about 6 inches, 7 inches deep. So we're gonna go full depth on this concrete, pretty much to the bottom of the tie. So it's a thick pour. Even the neighbor's pour is thick. But you know what really decides it for me, how deep I'm gonna go, is can I fit what I want to do on one load of concrete? If I can, I just pour it thick and just bring it all in on one load. If I've got to get 2 loads and I can make it, if I cut it down to 4 inches on one load, then I'll do that. But in this case, I can pour both of these. I can get 10 yards. And if I run them about 6 inches deep each, I can make it with a full load. So that's what we did here on this one. So you would think, 6 inches deep, wire mesh, compacted. And this particular ground over here, it's all decomposed granite because he had sod. He had brought in a lot of fill. He had this artificial turf over the top of the fill that he brought in, which was all decomposed granite. He really kind of went overboard on his infill, for this artificial turf. So he spent a lot of money on the subgrade for the artificial turf, and it's a great base. And that's exactly what I used here. I just used all the native base that he had brought in for the artificial, compacted it. It was ideal for a concrete pour. And you can see the flags in the background, how they're blowing. We're working at about 25, 35 mile an hour winds right now. You can tell by the dust blowing around. So it's not a good pour day. You don't want to pour when the wind's higher than, say, 15 miles an hour. You can do it. There is some chemicals you could spray on the surface, bowl float them in to try to and it'll seal it off so the water can't evaporate out of the surface of the concrete that quickly. But if you can avoid that and just wait for a better day, that's really your best choice. But in some cases where there's a rush, or maybe you've got, 10 jobs on the board and you just want to knock some out and everything's already set up, then you want to, take those risks. But for me, I'll just wait for the best pour day that I can get with, reviewing the weather patterns and all that stuff. And that's typically how I get by without having to take any risk. But you'd think, 6 inches deep, great base, wire mesh. I already said this once, but that would be a great pour, and it's something that I wouldn't really want to tear out ever again. Especially with the equipment that I have, it's kind of, it's just 3-foot Vermeer, 3,500 pounds. It's got a breaker attachment and all that, but it's not something you want to struggle with on 6-inch concrete with wire mesh on. You get through it, but it'll be a battle, typically. But when you see what happens to this concrete when it's all said and done, you're going to be absolutely amazed and horrified. Here's a little bonus. I thought, you know what? I don't want these ties to come away from the concrete in the future. And how can I prevent it? So I got some lag bolts and I just screwed them into the side. The concrete's going to go around those lag bolts. And those lag bolts are in there about 3 inches. So that's going to hold the ties from slipping away or going up or down from the concrete. So it'll become one. That's kind of the goal. Until those lag bolts rust or the ties rot out. Whatever comes first. There's that little Milwaukee getting it done. Look at that beautiful compaction. So each one of these jobs are not that big, they're pretty simple. I mean, we got a 12 by 22, we've got an 8 by 32. That's all. Well, here's the landing from the neighbors. He took that landing off of the back of his manufactured home. He had a garage built. It didn't have a landing. So we just slipped this landing over to this door. We repurposed. So we got a 3 by 3 chunk of concrete. We just slid in front of that door. And it worked out beautiful. So the owner here at this house, the gravel that he has here is very thin. He actually put it all in by hand himself with wheelbarrows. So, you want to go thin in that scenario. But he's not real happy with it, so he wants to go thicker. He's going to probably rent a piece of equipment at the Home Depot, have some truckloads dropped, and then just take it on in. That's his future plan. So we utilized some of his gravel for backfill. So we have a good base on his property as well as the neighbors. Now it's pour day. This is the fun part. This is the part you all wait for. We got S&S Concrete out here, which happens to be the only supplier in Bullhead. There is some other suppliers out of Kingman and stuff, but it's still a long haul. For them, it's about a 45-minute drive. So you could virtually say S&S is your only supplier in this area. So because of the thickness of the concrete here, you can see all the concrete coming out from underneath the forms. We're going to have to clean that up when we strip. We'll just chop it back with a shovel before it gets too hard. That's kind of the plan here. Running a 4-foot magnesium bull float with a rocker arm. Not real necessary on this particular span because you can reach everything with a pull and a half. So about 10 feet, you'll be able to reach this 12 foot. This is actually only 8 feet, this side. Here's your 10-inch wide, half-inch radius walking edger. We got James. We were fortunate enough to get James back out on this site again. He ended up finding a full-time job, so this is a Saturday pour. And he doesn't work Saturday, so I got him over here on a Saturday, which was nice because we needed the extra help to go back and forth on these two jobs. Also, we ran a nice edge along that little retaining for the mobile manufactured home, that block in the background. We edged that as well. But here's your joints going in. This is about a 2-inch deep cutter to really ensure that it's going to crack right on that point. You're breaking a lot of aggregate. Now this particular one is only 3/4 deep with 1/2-inch radius. This is your Arizona. It's a wider joint, but the radiuses are pretty much the same. It's coming together real nice here. We've got a good shape. Here's the Fresno. She's a real piece of work. That's how you run those walkers, so you don't have to get out there by hand and try to fix them. You can get away a lot of times just walking joiners in a broom. Here's Luis coming down the side of the house, touching the edge, making it nice and clean. Then he followed up with that walker joiner again. Then it's just a matter of probably a funny trowel, and here it is. We've got some pretty clean edges at this point. Joints are nice and open and straight. Touch it up with the funny trowel, broom right behind. So we had to do one hand pass along the house, and then it was just funny trowel and broom, all walkers. The job's going very smoothly at this point. Everything's looking really good. But wait till you see what happens at the end. Fortunately, we oiled these forms up so they came away really clean. Plus, we're preserving them for multiple uses this way. So once these forms come out, you can see all the slag. I've already cut it back to some degree, which is probably enough, because that's a pretty high step anyway in itself down to your landscaped area. So this area is going to all come up with gravel, most likely within a couple inches of the top of this concrete. There's a little touch with a paintbrush after the strip. Now we're dragging the hose all the way to the next job. This has actually already happened, but we just showed the end of the first one. We did have a little clog in the hose line at one point, but it came out pretty easily. You can see how this is stacking up. It's pretty stiff. I mean, there's no real slump off on the edges. Like if you stack this particular mix right here in a 12-inch high cone, you'd probably only drop maybe 4 or 5 inches. That's about it. So it's pretty stiff. This is all happening simultaneously with the other job. It's just that the video is spaced to look like two separate pours, but actually it's all one pour. Here's your layout for your joint pattern. Because it's 12 feet wide, 22 long, we're going 7 feet 4 inches lengthwise on the spacing. And then we're going to also shoot one down at 6 foot. So we're going to have 7 foot 4 by 6 foot spacing on each one of these sections, which is ideal. You wouldn't expect any cracking on something like this at 6 inches wire mesh. And I had forgot to mention that we also have fiber mesh in this. I'm running about 75 degrees today with about 5-mile-an-hour winds. Really perfect day. But wait till you see what happens after the broom. After we get done brooming, we were sitting around about 15 minutes with the homeowners, and we decided to show them how to wet the concrete. And that's when everything got turned into panic mode. Everybody started scrambling to try to save this thing. Here's a nice little Fresno, knocking out some lines here and there. There's some nice joint work from James. Then I'm going to follow him up. This is a funny float. So we hit it with the funny float. Now we're going to follow up with the funny trowel. We've already ran the walker joiner. We've run the walking edger. So we had a little dirt. All the dirt that we generated from dragging the hose around ended up blowing onto the concrete right there. So we decided to blow back some of this dirt into the gravel. Here's your nylon medium coarse broom. This is your final on this. So we thought it was our final. Come to find out, this was just the beginning.
Whoa!
All right, here's Doug. He started wetting this down to show the homeowner at this point, and this is when we went to cell phone. We put all our tools away. Cameras are loaded. It's scramble mode right now. And here's what's happening. We put a little water on the concrete, and that's when you notice all the cracking. We're just giving a demonstration how the homeowner should wet it, and then all these cracks appeared. I mean, it's not like crack, it's like shattered concrete, completely shattered. Pretty amazing. I've only seen this a couple times in my 45 years of doing concrete. It's only happened this is probably the third time in 45 years I've had a load quite like this one. And basically the concrete cracked into about 4-foot squares, I would say. And that's right after we broomed it. I don't know what was in the broom or it was just the timing of it, but this concrete just exploded basically at this point. This stuff did not cure out fast when we were finished. We were here about 6 hours from pour to finish, which is pretty standard. So first of all, I tried to trowel them out with the, I just went out there on sliders, tried to really scrub it hard, make those cracks go away. But unfortunately, they went away temporarily, and we got some curing compound on here. We waited a couple more minutes after the curing compound, but boom, they came right back. So we're scrubbing it again. At this point, I took a run, had to go back to the shop, pick up the power trowel. Now we're going to try to burn these cracks back together. Luckily, I had this machine that I knew would work because it doesn't run gas, so I'm not going to have a carburetor problem. So I just drop it on there, slap a battery, and I know it's good to go. And this thing saved me on this particular job. So we burned it hard, threw a little water on there, pushed those cracks back together. Tell you the last time this happened to me was in about 1998. I was in Vegas pouring a patio and walkways. It's about 15 yards. Didn't own a power trowel at that time actually, but I did have a plate compactor. So what I did was I just ran, because I knew I was going to tear the concrete out anyway, regardless at that point. But I thought, well, if I'm going to tear it out, why don't I just try something different? I threw the plate compactor on the concrete, and it just shook it back together and brought up a little cream, re-troweled it, and that seemed to work. And now in this case, I had the power trowel, which seemed to work as well. So I may have saved this thing, but what I'm really trying to figure out, is it me or is it the concrete? What really failed here? That's kind of the feedback I'm looking for. It's like, what do you think causes this kind of cracking? Is it because the dirt's not good? Is it because I finished it wrong? Is it because the concrete's no good? Is it because a wind? Is it because hot sun? I mean, what do you guys really feel like this is after watching this entire video, listen to my commentary, taking all that in, and getting to this point where we're at now? What happened here? Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, because I got a lot of these doozies coming up. You never know, I'm going to get another one. Have a good one. Bye.